U.S.-Iran talks end without breakthrough as tensions over Lebanon persist. Two delegations, one room in Switzerland. A historic handshake that almost happened tonight. The talks have ended, but no one is calling it a failure. Behind closed doors, technical teams are still working. While in Lebanon, rockets are falling, and in Tehran, officials are warning the deal could collapse. So what really happened inside that room, and why does one single clause still stand between war and peace? Welcome back to Professor Zhang Report. If you are joining us tonight, thank you for making the time to be here with us. Your trust means everything. Wherever you are watching from tonight, whether it is North America, Europe, the Middle East, or anywhere else around the world, we are glad to have you with us. If stories like this matter to you, we would be honored if you considered subscribing so you never miss an update on a story still very much unfolding. Part 1. Main facts and background. It started in Switzerland, in a quiet town called Bürgenstock, far from the noise of war. Two delegations arrived with one shared goal: to end months of conflict between the United States and Iran. For the first time since 1979, senior American and Iranian officials sat in the same room and looked at each other across the same table. The talks opened with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who set the tone early. He told both sides that political leaders were only there to start the process. The real work, he said, would fall on technical teams who understood the details. But the day did not begin smoothly. The Iranian foreign minister arrived and refused to step in front of the cameras alongside the Pakistani prime minister. He waited until the press left the room before entering. That single moment showed just how fragile trust still was between both nations. Soon after, tension grew even further. President Trump posted a message many saw as a warning to Iran. The Iranian delegation reacted strongly. Some reports even claimed the talks had collapsed entirely, but those reports turned out to be false. Diplomats on the ground confirmed that both teams were still in the building, still talking, still trying. Qatar and Pakistan played a central role as mediators. Their officials moved between rooms, holding separate meetings with each side. Witnesses described diplomats walking back and forth for hours, reading body language for any sign of progress. At the heart of the disagreement was one specific issue: Lebanon. The memorandum being discussed included 14 points. The very first point called for both sides to respect each other's sovereignty, including Lebanon's. Iran argued that Israeli military actions in Lebanon directly violated that promise. This was not just a side issue for Iran officials. They said real peace could not happen, while attacks on Lebanese territory continued. For Tehran, signing a deal without addressing this contradiction meant signing an empty document. By the end of the day, the talks closed without a final agreement, but they also did not collapse. Both delegations stayed in Switzerland. Technical teams remained behind closed doors, continuing discussions privately, away from cameras and public statements. For analysts watching closely, this was actually a meaningful sign. Real negotiations rarely happen in front of microphones. The fact that quiet, detailed conversations were still taking place suggested the diplomatic door remained open, even if it had not yet led anywhere final. What happened next would depend on what was agreed in private, far from the public eye. To understand what comes next, viewers need to understand the document at the center of this entire process. The Memorandum of Understanding contains 14 separate points. Each one addresses a different part of the conflict between the United States and Iran. The talks were structured around three main sessions. One session focused only on Lebanon, another focused on the Strait of Hormuz, and the third focused on nuclear issues and sanctions. This structure allowed both sides to separate complicated topics instead of discussing everything at once. According to several diplomats briefed on the discussions, there was real conversation about easing sanctions on Iran. There was also discussion about allowing Iranian oil exports to resume in some form. However, no side has confirmed exact details publicly. Officials say the final wording is still being reviewed by both governments. One of the most sensitive issues involves Iran's nuclear program. Technical teams are now expected to discuss specific questions. What level of uranium enrichment will be allowed? How much of Iran's nuclear infrastructure can remain in place? What kind of inspection system would be used to confirm compliance? A former U.S. official, General Mark Kimmett, explained why these conversations happen privately rather than publicly. He said serious negotiations rarely succeed when everything is discussed in front of cameras. According to him, technical experts are better suited to handle complex nuclear details than political leaders speaking in public. Meanwhile, in Tehran, officials have been issuing public statements through state media. Iran's parliament speaker responded directly to every unfinished negotiation carries weight, and this one is no different. For the people living in Lebanon, the stakes are not political theory, they are daily reality. Families in southern villages have already lost homes. Reports from the region describe destruction reaching into the thousands of casualties. For them, a memorandum sitting on a table in Switzerland is not abstract diplomacy, it directly shapes whether their towns remain safe. On the economic side, the Strait of Hormuz remains a major concern for the entire world. A large portion of global oil shipments pass through that narrow waterway. Even the possibility of disruption affects energy markets far beyond the Middle East. Analysts note that some ships have already begun adjusting their routes, moving closer to the Omani coastline to reduce risk. This shows that uncertainty alone, even without direct conflict, is enough to change global shipping behavior. There is also a political cost for both Washington and Tehran. Inside the United States, officials face pressure to show strength without escalating into open war. Inside Iran, leaders face pressure from their own public not to appear weak or rushed into an agreement that ignores Lebanon's situation. Both sides are balancing diplomacy with domestic expectations, and that balance is difficult to maintain. General Mark Kimmett offered a different perspective during analysis of the talks. He argued that linking the Lebanon issue directly to the broader US-Iran agreement created unnecessary complexity. According to him, Hezbollah never formally agreed to ceasefire terms, and Israel was never a signing party to the broader memorandum. In his view, combining these separate conflicts into a single negotiation made resolution harder, not easier. At the same time, Iranian officials see the Lebanon issue differently for them. Ignoring continued military activity there means ignoring the foundation of trust needed for any agreement to hold. This is the core disagreement that paused the talks. Not necessarily a breakdown, but a genuine difference in how each side defines a successful outcome. For ordinary citizens across the region, these distinctions matter less than the outcome itself. What they want is simple stability, fewer attacks, and a path toward normal life. Whether enrichment levels or sovereignty clauses dominate diplomatic language, the people affected are watching for actions, not paperwork. This is why analysts describe the situation as fragile but not failed. The diplomatic track remains open. Technical discussions continue quietly. Yet trust, built slowly and broken quickly, remains the most fragile part of this entire process. As both nations weigh their next steps, the broader question remains whether words written in a memorandum can truly translate into safety on the ground in Lebanon, calm in global oil markets, and long-term stability between two nations with decades of distrust between them. So where does this leave us tonight? Both delegations have left the table for now, but neither side has walked away completely. Technical teams remain engaged, quietly working through details that may shape the next chapter of this story. Nothing has formally collapsed, yet nothing has been fully resolved either. This raises an important question for everyone watching tonight. Can a peace agreement succeed if one side feels its core conditions are being ignored? Iran says real commitment requires action on Lebanon, not just signatures on paper. The United States says linking separate conflicts together makes the entire process harder to finish. Both arguments carry weight, and reasonable people can see merit in either side. What happens next will likely depend on a few key developments. First, whether attacks in Lebanon continue or genuinely ease in the coming days. Second, whether technical teams can agree on specific nuclear details, including enrichment limits and inspection systems. Third, whether sanctions relief and oil export terms move from private discussion into public agreement. There is no confirmed date for when talks may resume. Officials from Qatar and Pakistan, who have served as key mediators throughout this process, are expected to continue facilitating communication between both sides. In diplomacy, silence does not always mean failure. Sometimes it means careful, deliberate work is happening away from public view. For viewers trying to follow this story accurately, it helps to rely on verified statements from official government channels and established international news organizations. Avoid drawing conclusions from unverified social media posts or unconfirmed reports, since this story has already shown how quickly false claims about a total collapse can spread. We would like to hear from you tonight. Do you believe linking the Lebanon situation to the broader US-Iran agreement was the right approach? Or do you think General Kimmett's view that these issues should have been handled separately makes more sense? Share your honest thoughts in the comments below. We read them, and we value the perspective each of you brings to this conversation. This story is far from finished. What happens in the coming days could determine whether this becomes a genuine turning point toward peace or simply another pause before further escalation. Either way, the decisions made now will affect millions of people living far from that quiet room in Switzerland. Thank you for spending this time with us tonight on Professor Jiang Report. Stories like this remind us why patient, careful reporting matters more than quick headlines or dramatic guesses. If you found this report helpful, consider subscribing so you can stay informed as this situation continues to develop. Until next time, stay informed, stay thoughtful, and we will see you in the next report.